Hey guys, Jason here with a word to the wise. First, I just want to say that I'm glad that my last video had such a good response. It was probably one of the better responses I've seen. I didn't see any questions or comments or likes or dislikes in any of it, so I'm not sure how people felt about it, and I'm not asking people to decide. I'm basically pointing these things out. As I say, I like to think outside the box, and when I have a feeling that people are cookie cutting prophecies and things like that, and it's like I mentioned, it's something that I had mentioned many times. I've done very in-depth videos in the past, counting down the 70 years, 5 years ago. Now it's 2025, and I think now it's like almost like 80 years. One of the others. Anyway. So, what I saw now is Ezekiel 37 being pushed a lot. And if you read into Ezekiel 37, it talks about the valley of dry bones. Here again, I think that's more of a resurrection type thing. People being sewn back together from bare bones. And what the land, those in Israel and churches in America, people around the world, we'll say, are saying that, well, look at the number of people going back to Israel, and this is what Ezekiel 37 was talking about. And it's like, I think that's really making a metaphor out of what is really happening here. I believe that in some sort of a future, not in the past, but in the future, there will be many dead, as we know, through the tribulation, after the tribulation is done. And who knows, like in Revelation 11, where they weren't allowed to bury the two witnesses in tombs or graves, and they just left them in the street, and people celebrated it. So imagine in some sort of a new future where that's just, I don't take the time to bury this person, leave them out there for the vultures and the birds and what have you. And if mass graves are formed in some valley somewhere, more than likely in that timepiece land over there in some place, and it'd probably be scattered around the world, but just as a representation in that area, that's where Ezekiel was brought and shown. And then I wonder, when people are speaking of these things, and also then going to Ezekiel 38 and speaking on Magog, and it's like, why would you misconstrue these things? And there again, seeing this a lot on Christian churches, people like Jonathan Cahn was a Gibbs guy. There's other people too that have all, I saw something from Chuck Missler. A lot of these large organizational churches that have a lot of followers and a lot of people that break down what these guys are saying. I followed a lot of churches, just trying to see, good messages and things like that, but I always seem to find holes in their teaching. And then I try to say something to them, and then it gets nowhere. And I say one last thing, and it's like, that's it. I'm not coming back here for any of your rubbish unless it's here to see what rubbish you're trying to push on the world. And why would you push Magog? Well, if a Christian church is doing that, well, how come you're not referring to Revelation 20? Like, that's for our time. That's for our future. Why would you not include that if you're looking at prophecy? Where is prophecy being revealed? In the Revelation. So what's happening here? Is it possible that these guys are trying to lead many astray, to deceive, as in Matthew 24, where Jesus tells them many times, when will these things come to pass? And the first thing he says, see that you are not deceived. So if they're trying to push this to get people to go into the land, well, Jesus also said, when you see the abomination of desolation, flee to the mountains when you see your enemies coming around you. So this is like a cup of God's wrath. Flee. Don't fight. Flee. And in Revelation 20, when the resurrection happens, those people that are in that great city, they stay put. Then fire rains down to protect them. Interestingly enough, the same terminology is used in Revelation 13 in the second beast, where it says that they had the power to deceive many, even to make fire rain down from heaven. Is that because they're trying to push this prophecy timeline? So what happens if you stay in the city? What happens when Jeremiah was trying to tell the people, Babylon's coming to take over this land, and the people said they wanted to fight, and Jeremiah said, do not fight. But when you're going into the land and you're supposed to be celebrating, the good they're doing, which, if you're denying Jesus, then you don't believe in his teachings. You're not using the New Testament at all in your teachings. You're just cookie cutting things out of it so you can kind of convince Christians of the good and then referring more into the Old Testament. Well, when you're supposed to be fleeing in that land, when you see the abomination of desolation, they probably will tell them to stay put, and that's when the enemies will come against them, and it probably won't be pretty. Not if it's God's wrath happening on the people for their abomination. So that's what I can only see what is happening, is the convincing of Christians, the convincing of Jews, the Judeo-Christians and all the weird sects around the world. I don't know how they all are described and what they are, but if that's what's happening, that's a very dangerous game. And it all goes back to who do you trust? The father of lies or the father of truth? So I just wanted to kind of get that out. Hopefully I didn't get too all over the map too fast, but that's a lot of the things you can look into. And like in my last video, they use the prophecy of a land being created in a day, but they don't read the rest of it, as in also 65, talking about the new heaven and the new earth in the future. So that's all I'll say about that. Just a word of the wise. I got to do some running around for work. God bless. I think in the coming months and weeks, it'll probably be a little more apparent on which direction things are going. We see the computer stuff is blowing up faster and faster, and it's being put into hands, but seeing how it's not working well and seeing problems, I think it's all just part of that, so that way they can work out all these little kinks that people talk and worry about, and they'll say, oh, look, now it's all fixed. But I think it's already all in the works. They're just letting it learn through algorithms, not through artificial means. I think more of an ancient intelligence that could be possibly hoisted in the future, and they'll say this is the ultimate intelligence, and it'll be part of the coming back as in the days of Noah. So just a word of the wise, guys. Bye.